All right, so you wanted to really understand the Cardano Constitution, like what it actually says, how it works, why it matters.
Yeah, exactly.
We went straight to the source.
Yeah.
Dug into the full 19-page document.
You know what's so interesting about this document? It's not just like setting rules for a blockchain. It's kind of outlining how a whole ecosystem should work. You could almost think of it like a blueprint for a new society built on Cardano.
Right. It's like they really thought about
Yeah.
how this digital society should function, how decisions are made. So walk us through it. What's the big picture?
Well, first off, Cardano's goals are pretty ambitious. You know, it's not just about the technology itself. It's about using that tech to, like, improve systems, economic and social systems globally. They really want to empower people and communities. And it kind of harkens back to the ideals of, like, early internet and crypto pioneers.
So is it like they're saying, forget the old ways, we're building something new and different here. But how do they plan to actually do that?
That's where these 10 core tenets come in. These are like the guiding principles for everything in Cardano. You could almost think of them as the Bill of Rights for this new digital world.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Give us the rundown on these tenets.
All right, so tenet number 1, no censorship or slowdowns of transactions. You know, everyone wants their transactions to go through quickly and without interference.
Makes total sense, especially in the world of crypto.
Exactly. Then we have tenet 2, ensuring predictable and reasonable transaction costs. So transparency and fairness are key here.
Okay, so far so good. What's next?
Tenet 3 is all about fostering innovation. It's about open development and deployment of applications. Basically, anyone should be able to build on Cardano without unreasonable restrictions.
Got it. Open access, level playing field.
Yeah.
Seems like a pretty common thread in crypto.
Yeah, absolutely. And tenet 4 goes hand in hand with that. It emphasizes fair recognition and reward sharing for those who contribute to the community.
All right, now that's where things start to get interesting. You're not just building, you're actually rewarded for your contributions. So how do they make sure everyone plays fair in this system?
Well, that's where the remaining tenets come in. Tenet 5 gets to the heart of ownership, protecting the value of ADA, the Cardano token, and requiring owner consent for its use.
So you're in control of your own assets.
Yeah.
And no one can just mess with them. What else have they got?
Tenet 6 ensures that Cardano plays well with others. It emphasizes interoperability, the ability to connect with different systems.
Makes sense. Crucial element in today's world with all these different technologies.
Absolutely. And of course, we can't forget about security. Tenet 7 focuses on safeguarding user value and information.
Essential in any digital system, especially when dealing with finances.
For sure. Tenet 8 is all about sustainability, promoting responsible resource management.
No wasteful spending in this digital society.
Exactly. They're thinking long term.
Yeah.
Then we have tenet 9, ensuring equal treatment for all users, promoting fairness and inclusivity.
Okay. Inclusivity and equality. Good stuff. What's the final tenet?
Tenet 10 focuses on maintaining financial stability by keeping the total ADA supply fixed. It's all about maintaining value and preventing inflation.
Wow, that's quite a list. They really thought about everything. But who actually calls the shots in this world? How do decisions get made with all these principles in place?
That brings us to governance. And in Cardano, it's primarily on-chain, utilizing smart contracts for decision-making.
So no single entity is in control. They're actually baking governance directly into the code.
Exactly. It's a decentralized model with checks and balances, just like you'd find in a traditional government.
So how does this decentralized government actually work? Who are the players?
Well, there are 3 key groups: delegated representatives, or DRIPs, stake pool operators, or SPOs, and the Constitutional Committee, or CC.
Oh, hold on. Break that down for me. Who are these DRIPs and what do they do?
DRIPs are essentially representatives chosen by ADA holders to vote on their behalf on various proposals. Think of it like choosing your representative in a digital democracy.
Interesting. So anyone holding ADA can become a DRIP or choose someone to represent them.
Exactly. It gives every ADA holder a voice in how Cardano evolves. And these DREPs are expected to adhere to codes of conduct and can even be compensated for their work.
Wait, compensated? How does that work?
Well, the details are still being ironed out, but the idea is to incentivize active and responsible participation in the governance process.
Okay, that makes sense. So we've got the DREPs representing the people, but you also mentioned these SPOs. What role do they play?
SPOs, or stake pool operators, are the backbone of the Cardano network. They're responsible for running the nodes that validate transactions and add blocks to the blockchain, keeping everything running smoothly.
So they're like the tech wizards, making sure the whole system functions properly.
You could say that. Because of their crucial role. They have special voting power on certain critical issues that could impact the blockchain's functionality and security.
So they have a big responsibility,
Yeah.
and their input is clearly valued. But what about this Constitutional Committee, the CC? What do they do?
They're the guardians of the Cardano Constitution, ensuring that all on-chain actions align with the principles laid out in the document.
So they're like the Supreme Court, making sure everything stays within the bounds of the law.
Precisely. They have the power to deem actions unconstitutional and ensure the system operates as intended. And for transparency, all their decisions are published openly.
Okay, so we've got our representatives, our tech experts, and our constitutional guardians. It sounds like a pretty solid system. But what if the Constitution itself needs to change? Can it be amended?
Absolutely. The Cardano Constitution is designed to be a living document, capable of adapting to future needs. But it's not a simple process.
So they didn't want to make it too easy to change the fundamental rules of the game.
Exactly. Amending the Constitution requires a high threshold of support. At least 67% of ADA holders need to vote in favor of any proposed changes.
That's a pretty high bar. It ensures that any changes truly reflect a broad consensus within the community. But with all this potential for change and evolution, how do they make sure the blockchain stays secure and stable? You mentioned something about guardrails earlier.
Yes. Think of Cardano's guardrails as like safety features built into the system. They provide additional layers of protection, ensuring stability and preventing anyone from making drastic changes that could harm the network.
Okay, I'm really interested in these guardrails. What kind of safeguards are we talking about?
Well, for starters, there are limits on protocol parameters, like block size and transaction fees. These limits prevent sudden disruptive changes that could destabilize the network.
So someone can't just come in and drastically increase the block size overnight, potentially messing things up.
Exactly. Any proposed changes to these parameters have to go through the entire governance process, including voting by DREPs and SBOs. There are checks and balances every step of the way.
So no single entity can just make unilateral decisions. It really is a system built on collaboration and consensus.
Right. And for those guardrails that aren't hard-coded into the blockchain itself, the Constitutional Committee plays a vital role in ensuring they're adhered to.
Got it. They're like the watchdogs, making sure everyone plays by the rules.
Precisely. They can flag any proposals that might violate these guardrails, bringing them to the community's attention for further discussion and debate.
This is fascinating. They've built an entire system of governance into the blockchain itself. It's like a self-governing digital society.
It really is, and one of the most impressive aspects is how they've designed it to be both stable and adaptable, able to evolve over time as the Cardano ecosystem grows and changes.
We've covered so much ground already: the vision, the 10 tenets, the key players in governance, and these crucial guardrails. But I'm still curious to hear more about how these DREPs actually function.
Of course. Let's delve deeper into the world of DREPs and how they represent the voice of the Cardano community.
All right, ready to dive in?
So you want to know how to actually become a DREP. It's surprisingly straightforward. Any ADA holder can register as a DREP. There are no special permissions or criteria to meet.
Wow, so like theoretically I could become a Geode right now?
You absolutely could. Of course, convincing people to actually delegate their voting power to you, that's a different story.
Right.
Nope.
I imagine you'd need to like build some trust and demonstrate a deep understanding of the community's needs. It's almost like running a mini election campaign.
That's a great analogy. Transparency and accountability are key here. DREPs are expected to publicly outline their values and how they plan to approach governance decisions. It's kind of like presenting your platform to potential voters.
So it's not just about holding ADA, it's about earning the community's trust.
Yeah.
And showing your commitment to representing their interest.
Exactly. And remember, the beauty of the system is that ADA holders aren't limited to choosing just one DREP. They can delegate their voting power to multiple DREPs if they wish.
That's interesting. So you can spread your votes around.
Yeah.
Based on which DREPs you trust and align with?
Exactly. It allows for a more nuanced representation of the community's diverse views. And to make things even easier, there's talk of developing tools to help ADA holders research and evaluate DREP candidates.
That would be incredibly helpful, especially for newcomers. Navigating the world of decentralized governance can be daunting, and having reliable tools to assess DREPs would make participation much more accessible.
Absolutely. Informed participation is essential for the success of any democratic system, even a digital one. Okay, so we've talked about DREPs, but what about those SPOs?
Like the stake pool operators, we touched on them earlier, but I'd love to hear more about what they actually do. on a day-to-day basis?
Well, you can think of them as like the engineers keeping the Cardano engine running. They run the nodes that validate transactions and add blocks to the blockchain, ensuring the network operates smoothly and securely.
So they're vital to the whole ecosystem. But we mentioned earlier that they have special voting power on certain issues. Why is that?
Well, because they're so deeply involved. In the technical aspects of the blockchain, they have a first-hand understanding of how it works, the potential vulnerabilities, and what it takes to keep it secure and performant.
So their input is critical for any decisions that could impact the network's technical stability.
Exactly. Their expertise is invaluable when it comes to making informed decisions about the blockchain's infrastructure. But it's not just about their technical knowledge. They also have a vested interest in the overall success of Cardano, just like any other ADA holder.
Speaking of vested interests, you mentioned these guardrails that are in place to protect the system. How do they actually work in practice?
Well, some of them are hard-coded into the Cardano blockchain itself, for instance. There are limits on how much the block size can change in a given period.
So it prevents someone from coming in and making a radical change that could destabilize the network.
Exactly. These limits are there to ensure gradual, well-considered changes. And any proposed changes to these parameters still have to go through the entire governance process, including voting by DREPs and SPOs.
So even with these hard-coded guardrails, there are still checks and balances to prevent unilateral decisions.
Precisely. It's a multi-layered system designed to protect the network, while still allowing for controlled evolution. And for those guardrails that aren't hard-coded, the Constitutional Committee steps in to ensure they're being followed.
Right, they act as the guardians,
Right.
making sure everyone is playing by the rules.
Exactly. They can flag any proposals that might violate these principles, sparking further discussion and debate within the community.
This whole system of on-chain governance is fascinating. It's truly a remarkable experiment in building a self-governing digital society.
I agree. It's a testament to the innovative spirit of the Cardano community. Now, we talked earlier about amending the Constitution. Can you elaborate on how that process works?
Yeah, that was one of the things that really struck me. The high threshold required for any changes. Tell me more about that.
Well, as we mentioned, any proposed amendment to the Constitution needs at least 67% of ADA holders to vote in favor of it. This ensures that changes aren't made lightly and that they truly reflect the will of the community.
Makes sense. It's about building consensus and making sure everyone has a chance to weigh in on decisions that could fundamentally change how Cardano operates. But what about those who might disagree with the proposed amendment? Do they have any recourse?
Absolutely. The Cardano governance process is all about transparency and open dialogue. Any ADA holder can participate in discussions, raise concerns, and advocate for alternative solutions. It's not a top-down system where decisions are imposed on the community.
So it encourages active participation and ensures that diverse perspectives are heard and considered. This commitment to open dialogue is truly impressive.
It really is. And it highlights the emphasis on community involvement in shaping the future of Cardano. Now, you mentioned earlier that the Constitution goes beyond just governing the blockchain itself. It hints at something called network states. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, that's where things get really interesting. The Cardano Constitution envisions a future where decentralized communities or network states can emerge and thrive using the blockchain's capabilities. It's a bold concept that has the potential to reshape how we think about community and governance in the digital age.
Imagine a world where communities are organized around shared values and goals, operating independently but interconnected through the blockchain.
It's like the internet's original promise of connecting people and fostering collaboration, but taken to a whole new level. These network states could have their own governance structures, economies, and even identities, all powered by the Cardano blockchain.
Exactly. It's a vision of a future where traditional boundaries and hierarchies are blurred, where individuals can freely associate with communities that align with their values and aspirations.
It sounds almost like science fiction, but the foundations are being laid right now.
It's still early days, of course, but the Cardano Constitution provides the framework for these network states to emerge and potentially revolutionize how we interact and organize ourselves in the digital realm.
This whole deep dive's been incredibly insightful. We've covered so much. The vision, the tenets, the governance structure, the guardrails, and now this mind-blowing concept of network states. It's clear that a lot of thought and effort has gone into crafting this constitution.
It truly is a unique approach to digital governance. It blends principles from traditional systems with the innovative capabilities of blockchain technology to create something entirely new.
Okay, we've unpacked a lot, but there's one thing I'm still wondering about. We touched upon the Cardano treasury. and how it's managed. But where does the money actually come from in the first place?
That's a great question. It highlights how interconnected the Cardano ecosystem really is. A portion of the rewards generated through the blockchain's consensus mechanism, what's known as staking, is allocated to the treasury.
So the network essentially funds its own governance and development?
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing.
It is. It creates a self-sustaining system where the network's activities contribute to its own growth and evolution. And remember, accessing those treasury funds isn't a free-for-all. Spending requires a budget. That has to be approved by the ADA holders through the same rigorous on-chain governance process we discussed earlier.
So there's a lot of accountability built in to ensure transparency and responsible management of community funds. It all ties back to those core tenets we discussed at the beginning.
Exactly. Community involvement, transparency checks and balances,
Right.
and a commitment to long-term sustainability. Those principles underpin the entire Cardano Constitution and everything it aims to achieve.
It's a complex system, but the underlying values are clear, and it's truly inspiring to see them put into practice in such a thoughtful way. This whole concept of network states, though, really has me thinking about the future.
It's a powerful idea that challenges conventional notions of community and governance. The potential implications are vast, and it'll be fascinating to see how it all unfolds.
I couldn't agree more. I think it's time to wrap things up, but I'm definitely left with a lot to ponder. For our listeners out there, here's something to think about. So we've been talking about how the Cardano Constitution lays the groundwork for these network states. Digital communities governing themselves, managing their own resources, maybe even interacting with real-world countries, all through the blockchain. What could that kind of future actually look like?
It's a question that really sparks the imagination. I mean, could we see a shift in power dynamics away from those traditional nation states? Could we see new models of global collaboration emerge, driven by these interconnected digital communities?
It's both exciting and a little bit daunting to think about the possibilities. It challenges our current understanding of how society is organized. If digital communities can truly become self-governing entities, what impact would that have on the world?
It's a question worth exploring for sure. I mean, could we see more efficient and transparent governance models? Could we see greater individual empowerment as people choose to align themselves with communities that share their values? Or could it lead to fragmentation and instability as those traditional power structures are challenged?
There are so many potential paths this could take. It really feels like we're on the cusp of something entirely new.
And that's what makes this whole topic so captivating. We're witnessing the birth of a new paradigm. And the Cardano Constitution gives us a glimpse into how this digital world might be shaped.
This deep dive has been a real eye-opener. We've gone from the basics of the Constitution's vision and tenets to the intricacies of on-chain governance and the mind-boggling concept of network states. It's a lot to take in.
It is a lot to process, but hopefully this conversation has given you a solid foundation for understanding the Cardano Constitution and its implications. It's a document that really rewards careful study and contemplation.
Well, if you're as intrigued as we are and want to dig deeper, we've got links to all the resources we used in the show notes. There's a whole world of information out there just waiting to be explored.
Yeah, it's a rabbit hole worth diving into for sure. The Cardano Constitution isn't just a static document. It's a living, evolving framework that will continue to be shaped by the community.
And that's what's so exciting about it. It's an ongoing experiment in digital governance. And who knows what the future holds?
One thing's for certain, it's a journey worth following.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the Cardano Constitution. We've barely scratched the surface, but hopefully we've sparked your curiosity and inspired you to explore further. Until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.